But the biggest piece of advice that I received was it's not a love for the people that are going to keep you there. It's not even a love for the gospel. It is only a love for God that will keep you anywhere.
Hear him out. I barely know him.
Hello, and welcome to the Hear Him Out podcast. I'm your host, Izzy, and today I have my friend Molly on the podcast. Yay! And her roommate, Cassie, is coming, but she is delayed in Dallas traffic right now, and we are on a time crunch, so we're starting without her. So she might walk in at some point. But yeah, this is Molly. We met... Actually, okay, I was thinking back yesterday to like when we first met because so we both go to Watermark. Shout out. She was an institutor. We had Zay on the podcast a few weeks ago, Ashton, both also institutors. And then today you and Cass are institutors, and then tomorrow I have Spence and Joe recording too, and they're also institutors. So I'm just going through the whole institute from last year, getting all the content I can out of them. And so, yeah, we met officially, though. Okay, I think you would probably tell one story, and I slightly remember this story, but I really, remember our first, okay, we're friends interaction was when we cold plunged together.
Yeah, that was bonding.
That was, trauma bonding at its finest. You, me, and Cass all cold plunged for was that your first time?
Yeah.
I think that was my first time, too.
Oh, man.
No.
Second?
Second.
Second?
Because I had my first ever cold plunging experience was in March. I remember that. I think we cold plunged in April or May.
May.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, May. Because you had just graduated from the Institute.
Yes, I think it was my last week.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
I was like, I need to de-stress.
Yes. And you and Cass came over to our friend Gus's house. Gus, Bryson, Noah. Who else lived there? Ryan. Sorry. They all lived there. We just called it the boys' house because there's too many of them. And our friend Gus has a cold plunge. And so we cold plunged together. And I know that we had met at Gus's house. I say Gus's house. The boys' house. Previously. Do you want to tell that story? Do you remember that story?
Yeah, so okay. I met Izzy. Mm-hmm. I was there for a game night. I think it was a random Sunday. We were watching the Mavs game.
Oh yeah.
And I hear this girl say, "Hey, I'm going to go to Sonic. Anybody want anything?" And I said, I have no idea who this person is.
Yeah.
But I would love some mozzarella cheese sticks.
Yeah.
So that was my very first interaction with Izzy. I Venmo'd her $4.99 for some mozzarella sticks from Sonic.
Yeah.
And look where we are now.
Yeah, and here we are. And now she's on the podcast. And we're friends. Yeah, who knew that mozzarella sticks would start off there? I don't even think we interacted other than that night.
Yeah, I think
that was it.
It was like, hey, I'm really, really hungry, and this is the only way for me to get food right now.
And I'm pretty sure this could have been another time, but it might have been this time. I'm going to out myself here. This is embarrassing, but we're going to just say it. I think that was my second time going to Sonic that night. I think I had gone to Sonic, brought it to the boys' house, ate it, and went, I'm still hungry. And then went back out and got more Sonic. Granted, they lived 30 seconds from a Sonic, so it wasn't like I was traveling 10 minutes to go get Sonic. It was right down the street. And so it's for my second trip. I was like, okay, does anybody want anything this time? And then you wanted something. And then you Venmo'd me, and then we didn't speak again for a couple weeks, I think. Yeah. Or at least maybe a couple weeks later is when we cold plunged them.
Yeah.
And then the rest is history from there. And then we just kind of started hanging and talking more. I think that's when I got y'all's numbers. Or maybe I had texted one of the boys and was like, can somebody send me Cass and Molly's number? I want to get to know them more and hang out more. And so here we are. So yeah. So that's any other fun stories from our friendship that you want to share?
Definitely cold plunging brings people together.
We've done it a few times together.
Cold plunging is just, it's hard. So it's just okay, you're going to do it. I'm going to do it. It's hard to talk in the cold plunge. So you're just listening, and it's great way to bond.
We would just be like, okay, somebody start talking. Start asking me questions or start talking. Just tell me something.
Yeah.
I feel like I shared deep things in the cold plunge just because I was
You just
I gotta
like don't know
talk.
what's gonna come out.
Yeah.
And you're just like, this is the only thing that is
Yeah.
getting my mind off of how cold I am.
Exactly.
was great.
It was
Great
great.
start to a
Yeah.
friendship.
And it was just like, yeah, it was just so, I feel like those were like our bonding times where I was like, I like this girl. And like, just like, we did have some really deep talks, and like, you listened really well to some things and just like responded really well. Like, some hard things I was sharing and it was like going through at the time, and just like, you're like easy to open up to and just like talk to. And I was like, I like her. And so, yeah. And then, I'm trying to think of what else. We went on a run. Oh, we haven't gone on a run yet together. We're trying to. But you are a runner. I am not. Okay. But I did sign up for a 5K with you
Woo!
and Cassie and then a few others of our other friends in 2 weeks.
The 26th.
Yeah, I think it's in 2
So,
weeks.
2 weeks, 3 weeks.
And have I ran since signing up? Nope.
That's okay.
Not at all.
You got plenty of time.
Not at all. The last time I ran was like a week and a half ago, maybe. You were there, but you weren't running. You came a little bit later. It was like a group run with some people. And I last minute was like, fine, I'll go. And I was dying. That was the closest I think I've ever come to dying in the past year, probably. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, I think. But I pushed myself. I did it, And you were there at the end, at the finish line, to cheer me on and paint some pumpkins. And yeah, and it was great. So,
That's great.
so pray for us if you hear this. I don't actually know when this is coming out. Oh, this is coming out in 2 days. So, because I procrastinated and don't have anything lined up to come out on Monday. So this is coming out on Monday in 2 days. It's currently
Nice.
Saturday. So when you hear this on Monday, please pray for us. Pray for me. I think Molly's going to be fine. I don't know if I feel like a couple other people that signed up might not be fine either. I think we all just were like, 5K is not bad. We'll do it. And
It's a bubble run.
It's a bubble run.
So it's for fun. It's for charity.
yeah, and it was free. Well, it was like $12.
Yeah.
So it was basically free. It was free, and then it was like $12 for like a convenience fee or whatever. And it's like, okay, so is it really free? But anyway. So yeah. But anyways, shall we begin?
Yeah.
Okay. So the question that I ask everybody, you've listened to some episodes before, right? Okay.
Absolutely.
She's
Gotta
a
rep my
fan.
girl.
She's a fan. Some people have been on the podcast and haven't listened to a single thing, but they're like, let me on the podcast. And I'm like, okay. Fake fan. It's fine. Anyway. So the question I ask everybody, when is a time in your life that you feel like the Lord has asked you to hear him out about something?
Yeah. Just as Izzy was asking me to be on the podcast and just thinking through life and just when the Lord would have asked me to hear him out on something. Just so many things were coming to mind, but as the last few days have kind of narrowed down, the biggest thing that came to my mind was just like a condensed story of my story of grace. And just how the first time he asked me to trust in him was, hey, hear me out on how this life is so much better and what I have for you.
Yeah.
And so we'll just share in a condensed version
Love it.
about that. And then obviously like adding in some fun little details in there because it's the Lord.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love it.
But specifically, the part where the Lord asked me to hear him out in my life was when I was growing up. I wanted to ride horses professionally. It sounds kind of weird.
She's a horse girl.
Kind of weird, but I'm from Kentucky, so it's the thing.
Actually, that's crazy. I did not know you were a horse girl.
Yeah.
Really? Are you still a horse girl?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. You don't give off
No.
horse girl vibes.
I
That's really
appreciate
surprising.
that so
Yes.
deeply. Actually,
Yes.
that really is so
No,
kind.
yeah. Somebody told me a couple weeks ago, I think, that I gave off horse girl vibes, and I cried about it. I'm just kidding. I didn't, but internally I cried about it. I was like, that is so offensive to me. Sorry, shout out to any horse girls. We love you.
Cassie's
But
a horse girl. She'll admit it.
okay, Cassie like seems like a cool horse girl though.
She is.
Like there are some horse girls that it's like, oh my gosh, cringe. But anyway,
Okay, we've all been there.
yeah, I had my phase for sure. But anyway, continue.
But growing up, middle and high school, specifically high school, I professed faith at a young age, but just wanted to ride horses professionally. That's what I wanted to do with my life. It's just a really, really scary industry. It's a lot of fun. Some of my favorite memories have been on the show circuit with my friends and
Whoa. So you like actually did it like kind of professionally.
Yeah, so I was on track to like if I continued on the path, I would have probably gone pro at some point.
Wow.
Um
How old were you when you were doing this?
So the cutoff age before you can be a professional is 18.
Okay.
So pretty young by the world standards, but kind of like similar to college athletes. But the Lord just had different plans. And even though I had trusted him with salvation at a young age, he wasn't like the Lord of my life. As it says in like Psalm 16, Lord, you are my Lord. And just through a series of unfortunate circumstances, he pulled me out of that world. And now looking back, it was the best thing to happen, because that world is incredibly toxic, incredibly worldly. It's all about who you know, what you drive, where you live, how many horses you have. It's just all about money. A lot of people, unfortunately, are on drugs and they are trying to look a certain way. And it's just really, really dark.
That's crazy. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's really, really, really dark. Nobody is treated with dignity or compassion or kindness. And so was really upset in the moment. I was like, Lord, this is like my dream. Like, I would love to do this. But I just so clearly saw him giving me an even greater desire. And it was just around that time where I was graduating high school. I was like, God, this is my dream. Like, I'm not going to go pro. This is horrible. The Lord was just showing me more about his heart for the world, and specifically the lost. And I just remember in high school, just being from a small town in Kentucky, you see the same 5 people everywhere you go.
Yep.
And he was just showing me through classes I was taking in school, and just through giving me new interests and passions. Like, I learned about different refugee crises for the first time, and just learned about incredible injustices that were going on all over the world, human trafficking, child marriage, and most of all, like, unreached people groups and people that would never hear the name of Jesus unless someone went to tell them.
Yeah.
And I just saw him so clearly saying, hey, hear me out. I am taking this desire away. Like, yes, the desire might be good, but it's not what I have for you. And I'm going to give you something so much better, so much more fulfilling, that will actually bring you closer to me and is for your good.
Wow.
And I just remember him doing that so clearly and so sweetly. And it is just one of the biggest ways. Like, if you know me, talking about the nations and just God's majesty among unreached peoples is my favorite thing to talk about. And so it's just so sweet that the Lord turned my life completely 180 of, this industry is so self-seeking. It is so, how can I glorify myself? What is selfish ambition? How can I get that next dollar? To how can I give my life away for the sake of the gospel? Yeah. And
die to myself daily, like on the cross, or not on the cross, but give up my cross, or what is it? Yeah. Take up my cross daily. There we are. There we go. Sorry, guys. My brain. Take up your cross daily. Yeah.
Yes, and
just
me.
And follow him, and just like die to yourself and your own passions and desires, which, like, the passion, like, the Lord gives us desires. Like, the Lord puts desires on our hearts. And like, your desire wasn't, like what you said, like, wasn't a bad thing, but like, it wasn't exactly what the Lord had for you. And so he just kind of, like, maybe at the time, maybe for like a season and a period of your life, he was like, yeah, I want you to like focus in this world for a season when you're, you know, in high school and stuff. But then he was like, okay, but not long term. And it's not like you wasted any time. It's not like he wasted any time with you. Like, I'm sure he used you in that industry for the time that you were there for a purpose and a reason, you know, but it was like, okay, now we're going to move on to something else. And, but like, letting that go,
that was really hard.
It's so hard, because it's like, well, hold on, I've like, this has been my desire for such a long time, and you still have that desire in your heart, and so you're like, what? Yeah.
Yeah. And just even on that, of the industry being so self-seeking, and how can I make the best name for myself? How can I make the most money and get status?
Yeah.
Just in that whole transition period, the Lord gave me this verse, Romans 15:20 through 21, where it says, And thus I make it my ambition to preach the gospel, not where Christ has already been named, lest I build on someone else's foundation. But as it is written, those who have not been told of him will see, and those who have not heard of him will understand. And he was just saying, like, yeah, this might be hard, but I'm showing you specifically in my word where you can trust me and where I am giving you something greater that will not only impact you, but so many others around you. And so I'm a huge visionary, and so I love when the Lord speaks to me in like huge vision, almost like, hey, this is like the banner over your life. This is the end of what I've given you. It's this huge verse that you're going to go where nobody has ever spoken my name. And I'm like, okay, God, that is so great. Let's do it now.
Yeah.
And I'm still here in Dallas, Texas. And it's so fun and hard to follow the Lord in those small days where it's like, okay, God, you have given me the end vision. You have given me like the end goal, but hearing him out every day of like, okay, God, now that you've changed my desire to go to the nations, to go overseas, specifically to Muslim refugee women, that's where my heart is that he's given me. It's like, okay, how can I do that here in the ministry where I'm working at currently? How can I do that at Watermark with the many Muslim women and Muslim students who come into the coffee shop every day and just the people on the side of the road? And so I just feel like he's saying, yeah, I have given you the end vision, but hear me out on staying content, on growing in godliness and discipline and discernment. Yeah. And so I think that's just the biggest thing that I'm hearing him out on every day of, hey, God, I really have this desire, but now I see that instead of I'm training for this goal that I have, striving for something that I will never reach in my own strength, I know that I can rely on you to make your name known among the nations, as it says in Psalm 67. Like, I can trust that his name will be made great among the nations, and he's chosen to use me in so many others. And so it's just a different kind of contentment or this time around, which is so sweet.
That's so cool. So you like definitely think that the Lord eventually, like, you are like, end goal, eventually I will be working overseas with Muslim women. But like right now I'm in Dallas, Texas, and I'm doing other things and like still, you know, still ministering to Muslim women to an extent and degree, but not the end goal degree of like, you really truly believe that like the Lord's going to take you overseas one day. Is that true? Or,
yes. Okay. And if he doesn't, then that's okay too.
Right.
Whatever he would have. But even just the small glimpses of times when I have been able to interact specifically with Muslim women, whether they're refugees or not, has been such a vision filler. Yeah. Just the Lord's heart for the oppressed and the widow and the orphan, and getting to see that play out in real time over a people that I probably wouldn't love of my own choice. Yeah. And so it's just so sweet. Even interacting with them here with a Watermark partner called For the Nations, getting to just sit with them and hear their story. I know that is the Lord and definitely not my love for them that's coming through.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because that's so interesting. Like, I think that's hard, and like it's such a weird lesson to learn, and like how the Lord grows us through that of like, okay, Lord, like you've given me this vision. It might not even be, it might be an end vision like you, or like not even like end vision, but just kind of like eventually vision. I don't know, of like, okay, eventually I will be like, I really feel like the Lord wants me to go overseas and serve with this. But like, that's not what my right now looks like. And like, there have been so many things that I feel like the Lord has spoken to me and is like, okay, eventually this is going to happen. But I'm like, okay, but I'm not seeing it. And like, so why am I not seeing it in my right now? And that's always so hard to wrestle with. And I think of just so many people in the Bible, like the two that really come to mind are David and Joseph. Of like, David was told that he was going to be king, anointed king, you know, at a young age, and then didn't see that for like over 20 years later. And like, he had that vision. The Lord literally spoke so clearly to him, anointed him king, but then he had to wait for a really long time to actually see that come to fruition. And like, same thing with Joseph. Like, he had this dream when he was young, and then again, had to wait a very long time to actually see that dream come to fruition. And like, And he went through it. I mean, David did too. Both of them went through it, where it's like, this does not look like it's going to happen at all. Joseph was in jail, like in jail for years, and he like was sold into slavery. Then he was a slave in somebody's house. Then he was in jail. Then eventually he like things started turning and it got better. But like for so long, it just looked like, okay, God, why did you give me this dream and it's not going to happen? Same thing with David. David was on the run from his enemy, the current king, Saul, and was literally like on the run from him for his life because Saul was trying to kill him. And it's like, he could have died. Like he 100% could have died. And he's probably like in a cave thinking, okay, like, am I actually, like, is this actually going to happen? And like, how both of them had to learn that contentment, and like how we see in the Psalms, David struggle with that. And like, we see it so clearly of his like highs and lows and ups and downs. And like, he struggles and wrestles with it. We don't really see that from Joseph at all because we don't really get to see, which I like, oh man, I wish I could sit down and talk to Joseph and be like, what were you thinking?
Yeah,
like, what were you praying? Like, oh my gosh, like out of all the people, like he's one of the main ones from the Bible that I'm like, I'd really love to know. Same with Abraham too, right? Of like over and over and over again in the Bible, God giving people a promise and like giving people a vision of like what their life is eventually going to look like and what he is going to eventually do with them. But it taking forever to actually get to that, and like how they had to learn that contentment in the midst of it, and how the Lord grew them in the midst of it. And so like, because that's something I'm learning so much with so many different areas of just like feeling like the Lord has really spoken something. And it's like, well, I'm not seeing that. And number one, it's like growing your faith, because it's like, okay, do you truly believe that the Lord spoke that over you? And if so, like having faith that like he's going to keep his promise and keep his word. And it might not look like what you're expecting, right? And it could look completely different. It could just be not actually going overseas, or going overseas briefly, or whatever. But like still ministering to those people in just different ways. Like you never know, but also like just growing like closer to the Lord through all of it, and just like growing so content with the Lord. And I believe too, it's like you can feel two things at once, right? Like you can have this desire, but also be content at one time. It's like both can be true. And that's something I was talking to somebody the other day, I think just at the Watermark coffee shop, of just like, sometimes we think that having a desire means you're discontent about something. Like you're discontent about, like, we'll just take singleness, for example. You have to be like, so many people I feel like will hear like, oh, you have to be content in singleness. And it's like, okay, but I have this desire. And I feel like, the world, or like even just the Big C church sometimes really doesn't do a great job at like letting us single girls know, like that desire is good and healthy. And you don't have to shove that desire down. And the amount of times I've been told, like, if you're just content in your singleness and you just like stop thinking about marriage and just give it all to Jesus and just like don't think about it, that's when something will come to you. And I just like, that's just not true.
Not good advice.
And it's just not good advice. It's just not true. It's just not true. It's not good advice. I literally remember this was a couple months ago. I was like sobbing in this group time, and I was like just sobbing about something. There was something I had to let go of that was like really, 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 really hard. And I like did not want to let go of it. But I just felt like the Lord so strongly was like, nope, let go of it. And I was like sitting with some friends and just like sobbing my eyes out. And somebody in the room, who I wasn't super close with, but somebody in the room was like, do you think you're content in this? And I was like, no. I was like, no, I'm not. And that's why I'm crying.
You're like,
and I was like,
do you see what's happening
I was like, I'm sobbing. So I don't know about that. I was like, I'm content to an extent, but like, I still have this desire. And just like, anyway. And that can be true of everything, not just singleness. Like it can be in your current job. Like, okay, I'm content with where the Lord has me right now, but I also have this desire to do something more. Or whatever it may be. Like there's so many different desires, but just trusting the Lord in that in between, and in that waiting room, in that, just waiting, of like, okay, the Lord, I believe that the Lord has told me this, and like, I'm going to have faith that like, he is going to keep faithful to that promise. It might look different, and like holding it loosely to an extent, right? Of just like, it might look different than what I'm expecting, because with all of these people in the Bible, that got this promise but had to wait, like how the promises came about were very different than what they were expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And like, not like, they probably didn't expect to have to go through all of that suffering before actually getting to the promise. And before the Lord actually granted that. But thinking of that, of like, the Lord prepared them so much in the waiting, so that when they eventually did get the promise that the Lord had said, like, they were ready for it, And if they had just gotten it, if the Lord was like, hey, I'm going to give this to you, and then the next day he gave it to them, they would, like, they just wouldn't have been ready, Like, Joseph would have still been immature, and like still would have like not known how to like lead well, and like just all these things. And like, David wouldn't have known, same thing, like David would have been too young, wouldn't have known, like wouldn't have been so close to the Lord, like and same with Abraham. Like, all these people in the Bible, it's like they had to wait for a reason. The Lord wasn't just like, I'm gonna dangle this carrot in front of you and make you wait and just like be mean. Like, he doesn't play games with us. Like, there was a purpose and reason for all of it. So in all of that, in saying that, like, just knowing, like, wow, there is a purpose, Lord. There is a reason that the Lord has you in Dallas, Texas, like, and not overseas right now. And there is a reason, like, you might not be able to see it every day, you might not know, and that's okay. And sometimes the Lord reveals those things to us. Sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes it's in small chunks. Sometimes it's in big chunks, whatever. But like, there's a reason you're still in Dallas, and it's because the Lord's preparing you for something. And like, it might be preparing you to go, to Canada. I don't know. I just was naming it. But like, or it might be preparing you to go like actually overseas, and like it, like something so much bigger and greater than you could ever imagine, like Ephesians 3:20, and yeah, I don't know. I think that that's just like what is so encouraging, and like what comes to mind when I think about your story, and like what the Lord has spoken to you, and just like seeing your heart in all of it too, and just and being so content, still having that desire, right? But also being so content in like, okay, well, this is where the Lord has me right now, and I'm gonna just day by day keep chugging along and seeing like what doors the Lord opens, and seeing like how the Lord can use me in Dallas, Texas, with refugee women, or with with Muslim women, and just other women. And too, like, we can talk about your job a little bit too, and what you do, and like, you work with single women that single moms specifically that were incarcerated previously and come out of that and need a place, and it's like a 1 year, is it a 1 year program? Can we name it? Are we allowed to say it? We don't have to.
Yeah, it's called Exodus Ministry.
Oh yeah, Exodus Ministries. And like, it's called Exodus Ministries. It's an amazing ministry. And the job I have, like, we've partnered with them, or not partnered, but like, we've used each other before, and it's just like a 1 year program where the moms can come in with their children, and it's like an apartment complex, and they get to live there, and you give them a home, you give them furniture, you like help them restart their life basically. And you like help them get a job, and like you help them get off drugs, and like all these different things. And it's just so amazing. And like, the Lord has you there for such, like, so much purpose. And like, I'm just excited. I don't know. I just love like looking back in hindsight and just thinking like in 2 years or whatever, or even a year, it's like you'll look back maybe and be like, oh, that's why the Lord had me there. Like, I didn't see it in the moment, but that's why the Lord had me there. And just like, even just maybe the smallest little thing, or a massive big thing, like, you never know. But I mean, I think even just like in some different jobs I've had where I'm like, okay, this felt like a pointless job, but like looking back and being like, seeing the Lord's kindness and just seeing the Lord's hand at work through all of it, of like, oh, I learned that one little thing at that job, and that helped me with all of this, or I met that one person and XYZ. Even if it's just like, I met one person and got to have a gospel conversation with them, and you don't even know where that's going to go. Like, you might not even see how much influence that one conversation had, but yeah. Those are just some thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is good. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I think in that, I did a 12-month training program called Go Group. It's basically through Launch Global. Anybody who wants to go overseas long term can do this training. And it's super similar to the Watermark Institute or even like a gap year program. It's basically just to equip you and grow your love for the Lord and also give you tools for how to live overseas.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
When did you do that?
I did it before I moved to Dallas. So I did it 2022 to 2023.
Okay. So you did that and then you came and did the Watermark Institute. Dang. So like back to back.
Yeah, back to back gap year programs.
Wow.
But two of the biggest pieces of advice I've ever received, specifically regarding going overseas, is one, there was this guy who was telling a story and he had a student who came to him after a lecture and said, hey, when should I start language learning? This is the people group I want to go to. This is the dialects. Like, I'm on track. I'm doing my studies. Is now a good time? And he said something about her time with the Lord. And she was like, I'm not asking you about that. I'm asking you about when I should start language learning. And he said, no, you have this all wrong. You don't need to think about doing a second of language learning until you are nuts in love with Jesus. Wow. And that's just always stuck with me. That man is also an incredible lover of Jesus and his people.
Wow.
And just so wise and amazing. And so I know she was really blessed by that. And I was really blessed by that too. And then the second biggest piece of advice that I think about almost every day being in Dallas, because it's hard to be here. It's hot. There's traffic. There's a bunch of people.
Yep. A lot of people.
It's not the prettiest place I've ever lived. But even just knowing like, okay, if I go overseas to an enclosed country and I can only get groceries on a certain day, or I have to get escorted everywhere because I'm a minority in the United States, how much more am I going to be a minority in a Middle Eastern country or another country? And there's just so many stigmas that come with that that I will just have to deal with. But the biggest piece of advice that I received was, it's not a love for the people that are going to keep you there. It's not even a love for the gospel. It is only a love for God that will keep you anywhere. And just even talking about contentment earlier, I can so see that. And just, it is only a love for God and just trusting his goodness that I'm still here and trusting that he does have me at Exodus for a reason, or at wherever he may have me tomorrow for a reason. And those are just two of the biggest pieces of advice, not just for people who want to go overseas, but for anybody struggling with contentment as in any season, is only a love for God that will keep you in anything. Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I know that like there have been so many times in my life, even right now, where I'm in a tough situation, like in a tough place. And it's like literally the only thing keeping me going and the only thing keeping me there is God. And it's like, okay, Lord, like you brought me here for a reason and I'm going to trust you in that. And it's like loving God so much that you fully trust him. And like, that's the kind of love, you know, and the love of like, I love you so much and I trust you so fully that I know that you're not going to lead me down a bad path. I know that you are my good shepherd. Like, I know that you are guiding me and I know that you have me here for a reason and that you could take me out of this at any second. And like, but you haven't. And there's a reason for that. And I've tried and you still haven't, you know? And just going back to like, okay, Lord, I trust you. Like even just in a situation right now where I'm like, quite miserable. And I've tried to get out of something on my own and the Lord just keeps me there. And the Lord has just not opened any other doors and I've had to stay here. And like, and in that, I haven't done that well at like going to the Lord with it. Like, I think at times I have, and then other times I just let my emotions and my feelings guide me. And I'm like, I don't like it. And I just stop thinking about the Lord in it. And I stop thinking about how much I love and trust him. And I'm just like, nope, I'm going to make my own decisions. I'm going to try to get out of this myself. Yeah. And I think there are some times when the Lord pushes us out of things 100%. And the Lord puts us in situations to,
even just kind of test us of like, are you going to like, I don't know, like, what are you going to do in this situation? Like, are you going to leave when you need to leave? Like, are you going to, like, just even to help us recognize more about ourselves, and recognize like the Lord's heart in things. And I don't know. Cause I think sometimes I hold on to things way too long where the Lord is like, I'm trying to push you out and you're not going. So then eventually he just has to cut it off himself. But like, cause I'm like, no, I know you want me to leave, Lord, but I don't want to. And even if it's like a bad situation, cause sometimes I'm like, oh, the Lord has me here for a reason, just for me to suffer. And it's like, not necessarily, maybe like 100% maybe, but sometimes I'm allowing myself to continue to suffer. And the Lord's like, no, I'm giving, like, you have free will. Like you can walk out of this. Like, I don't want this for you, you know, but other times the Lord's like, I know this is hard, but I want you to stay in it, you know? Cassie's here.
Yeah.
Hey, Cassie. Welcome. We're almost done with her episode, so. Thank you. You're welcome to sit down and eat your Jersey Mike's. Wherever you want to. You can sit on the couch. I don't care. The camera's right there. This is Cassie. Her episode will be next. She's going to eat her Jersey Mike's first, though. Yeah, exactly. But we're almost done with this episode. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. I think, like, that's something to think about and pray about a lot, too. Of, like, am I in this? Am I staying in this because of my love for the Lord? Or am I staying in this because of my fear of man? Or am I staying in this or am I not staying in this because of my fear of man? Or am I not staying in this because I just want to give up? Or like, you know, just so many different like avenues and questions to ask yourself of like making sure that everything you are doing is for the Lord and like is stemming from your love for the Lord and your trust in the Lord. And that like he has a perfect and good plan for you. And, you know, he like wants good for us, you know, and sometimes good looks like hard. Good does not mean easy. But like how even in that hard, there's good things in that, or even in that confusing, it's like there are good things in that and it's for a purpose and a reason. But anyway, that was just like a little tangent and confusion and, or not confusion, but vague like thoughts from things I'm going through, and how that kind of just relates of what you were just saying to like, is it like what's keeping me here is my love for the Lord. And I feel like that's where I'm at right now is like kind of just realizing this past week of like, okay, I'm gonna stay here and it's because I trust the Lord and it's because I love him so much that I trust him fully that I know that there's a reason and plan for this. So yeah. Any final thoughts?
You trust in the Lord.
That's great.
It's hard, but it's worth it. Yeah, I guess to end, something that the Lord has been.
Hey, no, that's great. Praise the Lord from Jersey Mike's.
Amen. Sandwiches.
Ugh, yeah.
Love it. Love some carbs.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, just anyone, even us in this room, who need encouragement and trusting the Lord. The Lord has just been using Psalm 9 this whole last week. And one of the verses is that those who know the name of the Lord trust in him. And that's just like Molly version. I'm sure it says something different actually in NIV or ESV. But even just thinking through like his faithfulness in not only the whole Bible, but in each and every one of our lives and how he's pursued us individually. And it's like those who know the name of the Lord will trust in him. And that's just been such an encouragement to me. Like, yeah, I will trust in Yahweh and Elohim and Jehovah Jireh and all of these things. And has just been such a grounding verse of like, okay, these are all these things that are flurrying around in my mind, but I know the Lord. Like, I know the Lord and he knows me. I can trust him at the end of the day.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Join me next week. You already know Cassie's on the podcast and Molly's back. It's a great episode. We kind of talk about, honestly, very similar things to what we talked about in this episode, and it's great. It's fun. It's awesome. So join me next week. But until then, have a great week.